Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Today host, along with my co-host, Mr. Ken Kashuba. Hi, Ken. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Doing good.
Good. Well, Ken, I did something. Be the last thing I'm going to do, I think, this year. I know over the weekend I mowed my lawn. I think that's going to be the last time.
Good luck with that.
We've got some old trees on our lawn, and the leaves are starting to fall. So this one I could still mulch them with my mower, but from here on, I believe it's going to be raking time. So
you give up mulching once it gets knee deep. Is that the?
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Unfortunately, I have one large tree in the front, but it's got these very fine needles, so it's not like leaves, and I can basically suck them up with the mower all fall long. Don't have to do a lot of raking, but and I have nothing in the backyard. Actually, the only leaves I get in the backyard are from other people's yards.
From other lawns, yeah.
So anyway, it's a chore. I look forward. I'm the same as you. Once that last one's done, I'm like, okay. Done till the spring.
Yeah, done mowing, but now I'm going to be raking.
Yeah. But worse yet, it hasn't been bad the last couple of years, I don't think. But then I start thinking, oh no, I better tune up the snowblower just in case. So it's one thing after another, Dale. Choose your poison.
It is. It's one thing after another, but that's the way it is. Well, listen, Kim, this is broadcast number 317 tonight, and you've been along for 175 of them. So we just keep clipping along, don't we?
Creeping up on that 200 mark. You're going to have to give me a cake or something, you know?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
We'll say 25 more. Well, we'll be approaching 350, getting closer to it. But
yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Good to know.
Well, we're going to start off again with our In Focus segment tonight. And we've been doing this now for some weeks, and I've really enjoyed it. And it's a segment where we bring on 2 or 3 guests, and we each of us talk a bit about what our focus is, what we have been focusing on this past week in the news and what's happening in the world. And oh boy, there's some big things happening in our world. And so we have a couple guests again with us tonight, and let's bring those young people on. This young lady has been with us many times before, Miss Debbie Stewart. Hi, Debbie.
Hey there.
Debbie is, like I said, has been with us many times before, so we're always happy to have her. And another young man returning for his second stint on our In Focus segment, and that's Ethan Svaka, right?
What's up? Good buzz closing.
Okay.
Happy to be here anyway.
All right. So glad to have both of you on tonight. And like I said, let's start and let's talk about what your focus is. And Debbie, we'll let you start off here.
Okay. Well, so this may not be in the news as much now. It was for a little while. But the whole Make America Healthy Again with Robert Kennedy Jr.
Right.
He was kind of tasked with this whole childhood chronic disease issue that we're having. And, if you're a recent parent or grandparent, you might be able to recognize the fact that maybe somebody in your family or a niece or nephew or a grandchild is either autistic, has ADD, ADHD, or is being medicated for something, or some kind of chronic disease like asthma or sometimes even more serious things. And so I've been kind of following. At first, they were asked to do an assessment and then to put together a strategy for how are we going to change the direction our country is going in with our children. And some of these are children and adolescents and even in teenagers. But just to give you some statistics, so autism, let's start with autism. Back in 1970, there were averaged 5 cases in 10,000 kids. Not very well heard of.
No,
You wouldn't even know somebody like that.
right.
In 2000, okay, so 30 years later, 1 in 150. Okay, in 2010, 1 in 68. In 2020, 1 in 36, and in 2022, 1 in 31.
Wow.
So that is a huge increase in autistic rates.
Now, maybe you'll touch on this later. I'm sorry if we're jumping the gun here, but I know one of the points that I've heard people bring out is that, you know, that over time the definition of autism has expanded, and so they might be part of that expansion. Then may including more people in there than more kids in there than used to be. Do you understand what I'm saying there? Is that
absolutely? And I think that is an element here. But I don't think we're going to go from 5 in 10,000 to 1 in 31 by just expanding the definition.
Yeah.
I mean, probably every one of you knows somebody who's autistic, got ADHD or ADD, especially if you're like a parent and your kids have other kids they play with, you know, young children or teens. I have so many people that I know that they're either mildly autistic, some are severe, a lot of kids ADD, ADHD, something's going on. And it's a compilation of a series of things is what they're finding. So, but Dale, that's a really good point. We have expanded the definitions for a lot of things. Now, part of that is because we know more, but part of it is, well, hey, if I can include you in the definition, I can also give you a prescription.
Right.
And that's the wrong reason to be doing that.
Right.
Well, I was looking at autism and then an introverted kid online, and I was like, there's some crossover with some of these things. A child who's introverted, you know, they tend to get their energy from being alone. They might socialize some, but they're not out at the party all the time, right? So I think we have to be careful when we're defining something, because there's a lot of other things that could contribute to some of those symptoms and things that we see. But now if you've got all of them or a lot of them that they're describing, then, you know, there's a chance your child could be on that spectrum. But, you know, there's fuzzy lines with ADD and ADHD because the foods we're feeding kids, they're saying now that their assessment was that kids right now, 60% of their diet is ultra processed food. So that's chemicals, food dyes, all those nervous system things that are just screaming at them where they can't settle down and just be calm and cool and collected. Add to that the digital media that we're letting them look at, you know, whether they're 8, 10, or 15, all the screens, all the stress of like social media, if your child's on social media, all of those things can contribute to a very anxious person.
Yeah.
So anyways, 1 in 5 children right now is obese. That is crazy. That's like one of the worst in the entire world. 1 in 7 teens have mental disorders or experiencing mental disorders. Something's going on. Now we know there's also, what are they, PEFs from the radio towers and the cell phones. I mean, that's an issue too. But so they're saying there's 4 main drivers of what's going on. One is the poor diet. Another is toxic chemical, pesticides and things like that. A lack of physical activity that you combine that with chronic stress causes issues. And last is the over medicalization and prescribing of drugs. And what they found was that when somebody gets diagnosed, the doctor really isn't looking at natural things they can do at home or things they can limit in their environment or the food. They're going right to, here's a prescription for you.
Yeah, here's a pill. Take this pill.
Right.
Well, I think this obesity thing is, I think that's very evident. The lack of physical activity and the diet that so many kids have grown up on. I think that's a pretty evident contributor in my book. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So there's 4 pillars they rest on: advancing the research in this area, realigning incentives and systems. They want to increase public awareness and foster private sector collaboration between important, partners here. So, so how are they going to do that? Stricter food safety rules, updated infant nutrition, greater transparency in healthcare. That's going to be interesting because they don't want that in healthcare. And then expanded mental health support and partnerships in that area. So that's kind of what they're looking at. They have gotten together. They have come up with a whole series. I'm not going to go through all that because, I mean, I don't want to get down into all the weeds here, but they have come together with kind of like, here's what we're going to do now. And that was what I just read to you. They're also looking at vaccine injuries, and they're trying to look at, can we find out why autism and vaccine injuries, what's causing this stuff? And so they really want to kind of take a deep dive into those areas and see if they can find some root causes. Now they want to use real world data. They want to use the latest research methods for that instead of just like something that's old or isn't as real or effective or updated as we have right now. So they want to make it as real as possible. Yeah, I'm trying to look at some of the other. Oh, they want to integrate artificial intelligence into a lot of this too.
Okay. Yeah.
To help out. So there is a movement to do this. It's a good thing. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is, heading this up. He had a whole commission meet, and they are marching forward with all the things they came out with. And you can find it online, and it's very interesting. And the reason why I think this is important is because that's our future. And if you're a parent right now and you have a child who has ADD or ADHD, most likely they gave them prescription meds.
Yeah.
There are side effects for all of these medicines. And we're probably doing a lot of over medicating because the incentives are really not for health. They're to treat with prescriptions and medicines. That's where the incentives are coming from. So we don't really have a healthcare system. We have a broken health, system. It's more like it's a get sick system.
Yeah.
Wait till you get sick, and then we can help you, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're trying to work on nutrition programs, fitness programs, mental health programs, kind of all encompassing.
Yeah. I just want to point out, take the opportunity here to point out that we're in the process of doing a series on RFK and Make America Healthy Again. Our own Dan Stock, Dr. Dan Stock, Convention of States, is doing a series for us on RFK and Make America Healthy Again. We've already done one episode. We did that last week, and we're going to be airing the second episode tonight. Dan is in a group that, and I can never remember the name of the group. It's an alliance, some type of medical alliance. It's a group that RFK has requested their assistance, requested their advice on various things. So he's involved in this, advising RFK. And one of the topics that he's going to talk about tonight, this is a pre-recorded interview that I did with him, but one of the topics he's going to talk about is the dye in foods.
Excellent.
And how they approach that. Did you know? I've been learning bits and from my interviews with him. Did you know where these dyes where these dyes come from?
They're petroleum based, aren't they?
Petroleum. That's right. So he said, we've been consuming 10W30.
Yeah.
The way he put it.
Marvel Mystery Oil. Remember that? Anybody remember that?
And it never dawned on me that's where those dyes come from. But the interesting part is that they're not eliminating the dyes. They're substituting the petroleum products with plant foods, plant sources that are healthy, that are good for you. So the dyes, the color will still be there for the most part, I guess, but it'll be from a much healthier source than from a petroleum product. So,
Well, and you know, if you buy some health food, like something red, it'll say like beet juice on there or something. And
yeah,
the redness in the beets, which is also healthy for you, colors the product. But I think we've gone way off the edge with all coloring. Like when we had colored ketchups, I'm like, come on, people, tomatoes are red. We don't have to put a blue dye, a yellow dye. And those dyes are really harmful, and they make them, it does something to their nervous system.
well, I think that's, I think we're going to be learning an awful lot, I believe. If he's allowed to continue doing what he appears to be doing, I think we're going to learn an awful lot about our food and our health system. So I would encourage everyone to watch our series on with Dr. Dan Stock. This will be number 2 this evening, and we're going to be doing at least four episodes on this. So
I might have to tune in myself. I didn't listen to the first part, and I don't know what the programming or the scheduling will be. But I do hope that at some point you can cover the political coalition behind it, because I think whenever RFK was running as an independent, where he had just dropped out of the Democratic primary in 2024, he had a good groundswell of grassroots support, polling at anywhere upwards of 5 to 10% in the polls. And I think it's hard to overstate how impactful the coalition behind him, the MAHA coalition, broadly speaking, really helped sway the election in Trump's favor. There are obviously a lot of factors in the way that the election swung in the end, but RFK's endorsement of Trump did create a little bit of a shift in the polling.
yeah,
At the end, I think that was in August maybe that he endorsed him. I might be wrong, but it was late into the game.
Yeah,
it was late in fall. So I think there's a lot of people on the MAHA coalition who voted for Trump and who maybe voted for a Republican senator for the first time in their life, that are certainly not registered Republicans, that are not hardcore conservatives. They might not be even the type of person who would support COS, but they are really hinging their support on Trump based upon the results of RFK and what he's able to do in the Trump administration. So hopefully, I wish him the best of luck, and I hope that we get some answers to these things, to these pressing questions. But I think it's also critical from a political perspective for Trump and his coalition to definitely give a voice to RFK.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a hard road. He's got a hard road ahead of him, because there's so much political, so much big pharma, big money, a lot of influence involved in all this whole thing. So it's going to be very tough. Going to be very tough.
I appreciate you bringing that political side of it up, Ethan, because it reminds me, as you talked about voters coming across and maybe never voted Republican before, but it was for a particular segment of what was being represented in the policies that brought them over. And I think back to what the Biden administration called as a diversified administration cabinet, and what Trump's diversified cabinet looks like. One was pretty much based on sex and color, and this one, obviously, I thought Trump brought in a number of people that maybe didn't even necessarily like him, but that the results we're getting are from the fact that Trump was looking to bring in the most qualified person, and not trying to meet a quota. And I think it's been a huge difference in the two administrations.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. All right.
Sorry, I was going to say, when it comes to diversity in general, whenever conservatives discuss diversity, it almost always seems to be in terms of ideological diversity. On college campuses, they say we want more ideological diversity. Trump obviously counted ideological diversity instead of DEI in terms of race and gender whenever he selected his nominees. So I think maybe that's more of a left-right paradigm that conservatives or people on the right generally approach it from an ideological perspective, while people on the left might be more identitarian.
Good point.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Debbie. Ethan, what's on your mind?
So shifting gears from the presidency, last week, the first Monday of October, was the first day that the Supreme Court heard oral arguments for its upcoming new October term. I've been in the summer recess period of SCOTUS watching, so it's new.
Now, are they taking oral arguments on all the cases that they're going to be adjudicating, or certain?
They have at least the ones that they have on their docket right now are scheduled. I think all of them are scheduled. I'm not sure. Maybe some of them might not have a specific date, like the ones in the spring might not have a specific date yet, but they have an oral argument scheduled for the next couple of months at least.
So this is the oral argument period, and then they will adjudicate on the cases. Is that the way it goes, pretty much?
Well, they have sort of like a rolling schedule, so to speak. So on Mondays and Thursdays, I believe, they hear oral arguments. On Fridays, they hand out orders, and sometimes you'll get opinions in cases that have proceeded through conference. So they'll have a conference on a case, and they'll figure out where everyone stands, after hearing arguments. So maybe there was 6 justices who want to vote one way, 3 vote the other way, and they'll assign opinions. Someone will write the majority opinion, someone will write the dissent, and then after a period of time, while those opinions are drafted,
all right,
they'll come to a conclusion and issue an opinion. Usually, the big blockbuster cases don't get decided until late June, early July at the latest. But we'll have opinions over the next few months in the lesser known cases.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What you're going to say?
No, it's fine. I just had one case to put a spotlight on, and that's Childs v. Salazar. It's a case out of Colorado, and Colorado has some very interesting laws. It's a very odd state, very liberal in many ways, but also not in the sense that California is liberal. And it has this law that bans conversion therapy. It says that no licensed therapist can help a child change their sexual orientation or gender identity unless it's in furtherance of a gender transition. In other words, you can only help a child transition. You can't help them affirm their own sex, like birth sex. What conservatives would just call their sex, period. And Miss Childs is a therapist who does talk therapy. So she's a therapist who sits down and talks to you and makes you feel good about things. And she says that she alleges, and I think there's record behind it, that her aim is to help kids feel good in their own bodies. So if a kid comes to her and says, I have these feelings or what have you, she'll help them feel good according to like Christian principles, and she'll affirm their birth sex. So she won't help them transition, which is not something that Colorado likes. And I think this is the only prosecution they've undertaken under their law. They prosecuted Miss Childs. They said, you can't be a licensed therapist in this state unless you help someone transition. She brings her case through the courts, and I think this has been going on for about 7-ish years now. She's at the Supreme Court, and her claim is that she has a free speech right to share her views with people who want to hear those views, like the kids who come to her for therapy. And she's not doing anything. There's no treatment, there's no medication, there's no real therapy as one might define conversion therapy. Instead, it's just talks between her and the kids. That's First Amendment protected speech, which makes intuitive sense. And I was listening to this oral argument, and I'm agreeing with that sort of. I mean, there's some questions about standing and other like procedural rules, and those are whatever. But I'm listening to this. I'm like, yeah, speech, that makes sense. We all have a First Amendment right to speak, and this is in accordance with the Supreme Court's precedents. There's no real question that if you're a therapist and you're talking to someone, you should have the right to talk to somebody. And Colorado presents this argument that there's a standard of care for licensed therapists, and once you get a license, basically, you have to accept some restrictions on your right to speech. You have to accept that the state can tell you can't talk about these views on gender identity. You have to talk about gender identity this way, which is blatant viewpoint discrimination. They say you can't have this viewpoint, you can't share this viewpoint, you have to share this viewpoint instead. And I'm listening to this, and their whole argument is therefore based on medical expertise, right? Licensed therapists are medical experts in a way, therefore you have to have what we call expertise in this state. And Justice Alito, towards the end, asks them a question. Well, look, your whole appeal is to medical expertise. Can you think back to a time when medical experts have been wrong? And he cites some examples: lobotomies, eugenics, etc. And he says, are you familiar with this? And the lawyer says, no, we're not. And I was really struck by that because it seems like a glaring hole in their argument. Your whole appeal is to medical expertise. And you say that no one has a free speech right as a licensed therapist. You don't even understand the history of where modern medicine, this is like recent history, 100 years ago. It's not that long ago in terms of this. They were obviously glaringly wrong. And I think a lot of people, maybe 50+% of Americans, would say that modern medicine is glaringly wrong whenever they say there's a consensus behind helping 12-year-olds transition to different genders. And it just seemed like a very disturbing argument. I think the Supreme Court was very much convinced by Ms. Chiles's position, and they will be ruling in favor of her. It might even be a 7-2 decision. It might be pretty steep against Colorado's. But I found the arguments very interesting because once you get to the Supreme Court level, you expect there to be some very compelling arguments, and I couldn't find anything about Colorado's argument against free speech.
I now I recall hearing a few reports on this. Very interesting. So Colorado's basically saying that if you're gonna counsel someone about gender, it's got to be while they're in transition. It's got to be to help them transition. Is that what they're saying? It can't.
Basically, it only applies to kids, though. If you're going to help a kid talk about gender identity or their sexual orientation, their gender identity, it has to be to help them affirm views contrary to their birth gender. You have to help them transition. You can't tell them don't transition. You can't tell them no, you're not this way. You can't, even if they want you to help them say, oh, maybe they're uncomfortable feeling this way, which is common in gender dysphoria. I mean, I think there's a study that 9 out of 10 kids who question their gender and at like early ages, pre-puberty, if allowed to go through puberty without any medication or surgery, will accept their birth gender. 9 out of 10. Only 1 out of 10 would transition after this. So this is this is a critical area where public opinion has shifted, I think, quite noticeably over the past 5 years. And a ruling on this case will be much more favorably accepted by the public than it would have been during the height of like the woke culture. But another area where public opinion has shifted, I think, is in this question of medical expertise or just expertise in general, saying that a constitutional right is subject to some expert class seems to be not just a bad argument legally speaking, but a very unpopular argument today to make that appeal to authority, appeal to expertise in this culture or in this moment in time after the past 5 years. I think the whole rise of Trump is a repudiation of the ruling class of experts.
Right,
so I think
right.
I was just struck by that. I was just not it's not like a legal take per se, but that was just something that struck me from the argument that they would appeal to expertise to trump the constitutional right.
Yeah, you wonder too. The statistic was 1 in 7 deal with mental health issues. What percentage of that is transgender and transitioning stuff? And I'm guessing a high percentage of those people will struggle with that if they're in a man's body and they're trying to be a female or vice versa. They're going to struggle because every single cell in your body has the male chromosomes, and you're trying to change to a female. Your body's going to be fighting you the whole time, and that's going to cause health issues.
Frequently you hear people defend the decision to help a child transition by saying, would you rather have a living girl or a dead son? That sort of argument.
Right.
And I think that just obviously implies that there has to be some mental torment, or maybe not torment, but mental tension involved in these decisions. Otherwise, you're not going to kill yourself. Right? But that is, doctors tell parents this sort of stuff. Would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter? It's really disturbing stuff. So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. There has to be some sort of mental tension involved in many of these cases.
I won't include you in this, Ethan, but Ken and Debbie, did you, in growing up, did you ever know or have a friend that struggled with whether they're male or female? Did you have any? I never did either. Now,
no. But then again, we weren't growing up looking at our phone screens and being influenced by things that that certainly have been introduced over the recent years that confuses kids and certainly gives them different thoughts. You hear it all the time. Gee, I remember just going down the street and playing kickball and coming home and the lights went on for dinner, and that's, and then we sat down, watched a program or two on television, and went to bed.
Right.
And that's not happening anymore. So yeah, I think the influence of what's been brought in technologically wise, and certainly from a growth, I'll call it a growth of influence from people that really, the mental issue of all of this, I think, has grown. And I wonder too, a little bit statistically wise, I know it goes back further than this, but I wonder how much, what kind of a spike we saw in this kind of area and other type of mental issues over the COVID years. Locked at home, told to stay inside, fear factors that were brought in, and the kids who weren't able to go to school. I'm wondering how much of an effect, mentally wise, whether study wise, whether there was a big spike based on the COVID years. That's just a kind of a side note, but I don't know. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay. All right.
Well, and I'm thinking too, like Obama got in office, 2008 through 2016. He started this whole Common Core thing, mm-hmm. where everything's getting pushed from the federal level. Of course, they gave them the money before they actually saw the Common Core. So a lot of your conservative states like Indiana's like, oh gosh, this is terrible. Well, sorry, you took the money, you got to implement it. And then I think that was warming people up to a teacher going, hey, if you're not a boy, you could be a girl.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers are saying this in kindergarten, first, second grade to these kids. And so they're planting all of these thoughts. Growing up, we didn't have that. I never knew anybody. I mean, there were tomboys, but they still turned into girls after puberty. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I knew the same. Now, I don't know. Maybe there were people struggling with that, and it just wasn't known. I don't know.
I'm sure there were. You probably didn't want to talk about it.
But I certainly saw the tomboy transition to the girl. I saw that in my own neighborhood.
Yeah.
One of the best softball player in our neighborhood was a girl. And all of a sudden, she no longer played ball with us.
Yes.
We didn't see her anymore. And sure enough, she became a girl. She was, her parents steered her more toward being a girl. So anyway. All right, Ethan. Boy, you really uncorked something.
Yeah, I think I'll close here. This is unrelated, of course, to the Supreme Court case, but in terms of the rise, I think it's been over the past 5 to 10 years that you've seen the civics just jump off the charts. Because I'm sure there have been people who would have identified as transgender back in decades ago. It was definitely less than 1%. It was not even a factor, really. But there were people out there. The difference now, as I think Ken rightly concluded, is that you have so much more normative influence from just teachers, but from your phone, from the culture around you. So much of that is
exactly
at a young age. I think it's like, is it 10? It's over 10%, I believe, of kids in colleges who identify as transgender, and it's even higher who identify as genderqueer or non-binary. So it's jumped off the charts at a level that I'm skeptical is at all natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and two, I was just looking at, there was an article that came out that was talking about the 5 top Supreme Court cases, one of which the one you've been talking about, Ethan, but the other 4 still had to do with either LGBT, it had to do with transgender, it had to do with all these gender issues. And I'm like, our Supreme Court of the United States is spending their time on something that didn't even exist 50 years ago, because we have just totally brought this to the forefront and made it the most important thing. Not we, but a certain sect of the population has made this their thing. And I'm like, that's what our Supreme Court is doing. I don't know. It just seems like there's way too many of those cases.
Yeah, I agree.
I was just saying at the court, I think Justice Barrett reiterated this in her recent book, that the court goes as the culture goes. There is no Supreme Court deciding that we're going to create this case to hear, right? They don't go and choose their cases, that they have to hear what the
Right.
what the pressing issues in the lower courts are. You know, if two courts across the country disagree, then it's what the Supreme Court has to hear. And unfortunately, what are you going to disagree on besides the new thing that there's no settled law over? Whether the question of transgender bathrooms, there's no precedent on. Of course, there's going to be a disagreement the court has to settle. So it's really, it shows you the defining issues of the times: birthright, citizenship, gender issues, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
good point.
Just to throw one more thing on this, when you go back, you were asking about, you know, obviously when we were in our childhood or whatever. I mean, the issue has been around biblically forever, but the only thing that I mean, there might have been one or two people in my high school that actually were considered gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was not, and that people didn't really start coming out much later after that. But you know, the gay issue was really the only thing that was prevalent that I can even remember. It's not prevalent, but that was something that people thought about back then, or knew somebody who professed to be gay. So yeah, it's come a lot further than just that side of things. Yeah.
All right, Ethan. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ken, I think you and I are kind of, we don't have much time left here in this segment, but I think you and I are in agreement as to being kind of focused on the Gaza deal, the peace agreement, right?
Yeah, I think we can combine our segment and really just talk a little bit about what to me is historic, and I guess, you know, the only thing I can really talk about now, I think a lot of people right now are just kind of a little bit stunned. We're not getting a whole lot of comment and some agreement. I do from on the one side, I see Hillary Clinton actually supported and gave credit to Trump. On the other side of that, I'd have to go back and pull the name, but it was somebody out of Biden's administration that his question was, well, his comment was, why couldn't they have done this 6 months ago? Because the plan was actually part of the Biden administration that Trump stole. That's basically the only way I could say it. You know, he stole the plan, and why did it go 6 more months? In other words, I don't know, throwing kerosene on something that really is blatantly a true credit, and I think at this point could be the biggest thing in his administration, in his term.
Well, I certainly want to understand the other parts of this plan. Obviously, getting the hostages, the living hostages released was a major point in the plan. There's no doubt about that. Remains to be seen with regard to the deceased hostages and whether those bodies will be recovered. But it also remains to be seen the points to follow that are going to follow here. As a matter of fact, I think in our upcoming roundtable, I think this is going to be the topic that John's going to have us address, is the Gaza peace agreement.
Well, and I'd agree that you know,
he wanted to wait to see if the hostages really did get released.
And if you saw any footage of this at all, I don't know how you could not look at it and be thankful for what was done, first of all, and give credit to Trump, because I don't think there's anybody else that I can think of right now that could have got it done.
Yeah.
And the hardest part is yet in front of them at this point. I think, you know, following through with the steps that are to follow. I think, you know, whether arms and what have you are laid down as far as Hamas is concerned.
Yeah, that's my concern. Is that do you really think that's going to happen? Do you really think this ideology is going to go away?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, some of the members and some of the troops, maybe some of the weapons may go away, but will the ideology will that go away? I don't know.
There's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. And I you know, I've seen some questions, obviously, people asking, you know, how do you feel? Are you hopeful? Are you pessimistic? Most people want to be hopeful that because this first step has actually come about and been taken, and just the response of these people, seeing their loved ones again who didn't know their whereabouts or their condition, live or dead, for so many years. I think it's something that truly is historical in the fact that if you didn't have Trump able to go in and eliminate the nuclear plants from Iran, and that was a step, I think, that showed something. The other part is I think there was some hesitancy over Bibi, whether there was trust there, and I think that what Trump has done is basically shown the Arab world that he can be trusted, and that getting Netanyahu, I can't even say that tonight.
Netanyahu,
getting him to the point where this plan worked out. I think that is a key in getting the next steps to fall in line.
Well, I don't know if you heard these reports or not, but that the Israeli military pulling back to agreed upon lines.
Yeah.
That the areas that they pulled out of, that there's Hamas is coming out and trying to take charge of trying to direct the people that are in those areas where the military has pulled back from. So I believe Hamas is still going to be a factor here, still something to deal with here. So hopefully it'll turn out right. Well, okay, guys, we've gone over time on this segment, but very good segment. Very good segment. Ethan, Debbie, thank you very much. Thank you for being on tonight. And we will have you back again for sure.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. All right, Ken. Good. That was a good segment. Always, I'll tell you, I'm enjoying these In Focus segments. I think they're so good.
I can tell.
Ken, let's take a minute here and tell us about that QR code up there in the corner, okay?
Sure enough. That QR code right there is a support QR code. Again, it's there for you to show that you're enjoying what we're doing, the programming. It's also for a way that if you take your smartphone out and take your camera and hit that QR code, it'll ask you for your name and email address, and it'll give you access to a platform where you can have input. Go there, tell us maybe some of the things you like or dislike, some of the things you'd like to see. There's a way to communicate on the platform. There's also a whole host of contributor segments that have been stored there in the archives. So it's a way to go back and look at some of the things that we've done. Maybe if you're just joining recently, or if you're new, and we welcome you to show your support and put in give us your input. So it's a way to communicate with us as well. So
all right.
How about that QR code?
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
Well, as I was mentioning when Debbie Stewart was giving her talk on during the In Focus segment, caught up with Dr. Dan Stock, and we recorded episode number 2 of his series on RFK, Make America Healthy Again. So let me jump right into that recording, and we'll be right back. I hope you find this very interesting. Dan's always fun to talk to and to listen to. He does a good job on this stuff. So hope you all enjoy it. We'll be right back. Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Today host. Well, we're here for episode 2 of our series on RFK and Make America Healthy Again with our own Dr. Dan Stock. So without further ado, let me bring Dan on and let's get started. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dale. How are you today?
Good. Glad to have you back, bud.
Thanks for having me back.
We've already missed one appointment with Dan, but Dan, I just blame it on you being a doctor. Okay, so something came up, and he couldn't make it. Well, everyone understands that, you being a doctor and everything. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
It's not like McDonald's when you don't take third-party payment money. It's not like McDonald's. It's not sitting on the shelf ready to serve.
Okay. All right. Dan, this is episode number 2. Give us about a 2-sentence summary, if you could, of what episode 1 was about.
So episode 1 was to show everybody how financial conflicts of interest had actually selected a group of people to work at the FDA, CDC, and other branches of the NIH, who had actually taken an opinion that was highly practiced ignorance based upon what was financially beneficial, and was selecting for people who were really good at ignoring reality and could be used that way, along with some people who were pretty naive and just really weren't good at scientific method. And then this led to a whole bunch of damage, both in the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the vaccine industry. The whole idea after setting this up in the first thing was, now we're going to show what RFK has been doing to try and right that ship.
Okay. All right, good. So we're going to, in episode 2 here, we're going to focus on the food industry, right? What he's done there. And I think we're going to talk a bit about the drug prices, Trump RX. That's obviously been in the news here very recently. So, okay, go ahead, Dan. Take it away.
Well, let's start off with food. And I think the first thing people need to remember that we talked about in episode 1 was about the category called generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. Which is where a food industry was allowed to come in and say, hey, we put this chemical in our food, and the FDA was able to say, hey, it's generally recognized as safe. And then no research had to be done on it. We just assumed it wouldn't kill you. So the first thing, this had led to a great many chemicals, mostly food dyes, but also certain preservatives that were actually derivatives from the refining of petroleum products. So, yeah, that's right. Different colored substances that were gotten left over after you've made gasoline, that the FDA, the food industry, came and said, yeah, red dye number so-and-so, and, we get it from making oil. And they're like, okay, we generally recognize it as safe, because everybody's been eating oil for the, centuries, right? The FDA would approve these products as saying, okay, we'll accept them as generally recognized as safe. And one of the first things that Mr. Kennedy did was to go to the food industry and say, look, this can go down one of 2 ways. I can actually declare all of these no longer to be generally recognized as safe. And that will require you to do research on them if you're going to put them in your food. Now, of course, the downside, if you do the research, and it turns out the research shows these things as toxic, you then have opened yourself up to liability from everybody who wants to sue you because you've been serving toxic food. He said, that's option number 1. And option number 2 is you can take them all out of your food on your own. Well, this didn't take a lot of calculation on the food to sit down and say, yeah, okay, well, we have this advantage here. Because you see, none of these chemicals are actually allowed to be put in food in Europe. So when you buy Fruit Loops in Europe, they have, the colors are coming from other plants and foods, not from petroleum. They said, well,
they do have color, but they come from a different source, is what.
Right. They're actually colored with things from plants that are normal plant proteins you would get if you ate strawberries or something like that.
Oh, all right. All right.
And so they are things that are generally recognized as safe because we evolved eating them. Our body is designed for them, unlike, 10W30. When
I have tasted that just to let everybody know.
Just so everybody understands the quality of what you've been eating in your food. But in Europe and other places, they have long said, no, we're not going to let you put 10W30 in the food. And so they all had formulations made up that they could quickly switch to that were made with these other food colorings and preservatives. And so when Mr. Kennedy came to them and said, well, here's your choice. You can do research and prove they're safe, or you can take them out. And the food industry, not being stupid, said, no, we're not going to go prove that they're safe or that they're harmful. We're just going to replace them. After all, there was a lot of research by this time that had long indicated that these things actually overburden the body's detoxification pathways because they had to be detoxified. And therefore, it was like, nope. If you're going to put us in that situation, then we'll just take them out of the food. And most of them have said by the end of this year or the end of next year, they're going to have them out of nearly every prepared food. And this was possible simply because Europe had long ago said, we won't let you sell it here. And so they already had formulations where all they had to do was ramp up the supply chains to get more of that stuff to make it the way Europe wanted it. And then we would be able to take out these chemicals that most research has strongly indicated are actually associated with disease. And we have a biochemical explanation for them because, you know, if the body's going to detoxify this much chemical A, it may not be able to detoxify this much of chemical B. So the more A you throw in, the less B you can handle. And these things were basically taxing the body's detoxification pathways and making it so that other toxins couldn't be cleared. And rather than prove that was the thing, the food industry said, we surrender. They'll be out of the food. In addition to that, one of the things that had always been problematic here is that if you wanted in your individual state to go say, hey, we're not going to let you sell Fruit Loops with artificial colors in them in Indiana, you had the problem in that the FDA was actually giving cover for the food industry by saying, no, it's generally recognized as safe. And so Mr. Kennedy also then reached out to many of the states and said, by the way, if you were to bring that up right now and ask for a waiver on this, that waiver would have to be approved through the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I will actually pass that waiver so that you can say in Indiana, we may not sell food that has artificial food dyes. Well, all of a sudden the food industry said, look, I got the carrot on this end, I got the stick on this end, I'm going to be stuck with stuff I can't sell. And it became a very easy thing as many governors, including the governor of Indiana, started to move things to the, we're not going to let you do that. In addition, there have even been states that passed laws that said that school cafeteria meals may not contain, after such and such a date, artificial food coloring. And therefore, the food industry very quickly got to the retooling of saying, look, we're taking this out as a problem of disease-causing food.
Okay. All right.
And these are probably two of the most, they got a lot of press, at least in the in Epic Times and the newspapers that I read.
Right.
I think they were not so badly panned by most of the other captured media because it was hard to argue that this was a good idea. I mean, nobody wants to eat 10W30. And so it was an easy sell. This was probably the easiest thing for Mr. Kennedy to tackle at Health and Human Services.
You know, I remember when certainly when RFK took office, and this was one of the first things that came about was the removal of the food dyes. You know, and I didn't pay much attention to it, quite honestly. You know, I thought, and of course, Fruit Loops being the big example. You know, all I could picture were Fruit Loops without any color, but in fact, they will still have color.
Yeah.
It'll just come from a different source, a more healthy source.
That's correct. And it's important for people to know that these food colorings have been put in nearly everything you can think of, to Cheetos and Doritos. Fruit has been injected with them to keep the color looking nice.
Why do you, is it a cheaper process to use the petroleum products? Is that?
Yeah, the petroleum industry's throwing them away.
I see. Okay.
They got to get rid of it. It's toxic. You can't burn it. They'll put all that stuff out into the air. So the food industry's getting, or rather the petroleum industry's getting rid of this stuff. It's like, wow. Hey, we don't have to landfill it. Let's give it to Nabisco.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Anything else on the food industry then, Dan?
You know, I think that's actually been the major breakthrough on food. This is kind of the low-hanging fruit. I think Mr. Kennedy went for this first because he recognized this is going to be easy. All right. There isn't actually a group out there defending petroleum-based food dyes. You know, it's kind of hard to get people to enjoy the idea of that. And so it had already been accepted. The food industry wasn't going to spend any money trying to make bad studies to prove it was good.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of an easy run for him to take out. And it's not the only thing that's wrong with food. But much of the other stuff, like putting high amounts of sugar in there, the states have begun to handle on their own. Now that they recognize they're not going to get any fight from Health and Human Services, going out and saying that, hey, we're not going to let you call pizza a vegetable anymore, which the Health and Human Services had been doing.
Really?
Yeah, that's right. Pizza was considered a vegetable. It was a serving of vegetables if you had pizza.
I've never grown pizzas in my garden, but anyway,
you have to have the right green thumb for it.
Is that what it is? Okay.
But because of this, I think a lot of this that we need to give credit to Mr. Kennedy for was just telling the states that, look, you won't get blowback now if you come out and say, we're not going to let you sell this in our school cafeteria. You're not going to let us put this in the food supply in the state. We're not going to let food stamps be used for these kinds of foods. Just giving the states permission to do that, knowing that they would not be financially threatened, because Health and Human Services could have always come out and start cutting subsidies and start cutting money that was coming to your state if you did that. The very fact that he's let all of them know that's not only not going to be a problem, but we're going to support you when you do that, has really opened up and taken this low-hanging fruit and got it in the basket pretty quick. Something that I think Mr. Kennedy needs to be given credit for.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on then, Dan. Something that's certainly been in the news here in the past week or so, and that's the drug prices.
Yeah.
Trump RX. And so what can you tell us about that?
So people need to know that there's been a backhanded mechanism by which the United States has actually been subsidizing the drug costs of the entire world. And the way this has worked is with the non-reimportation. Basically with the idea that, oh my God, if a drug was made in India and a drug was made in India and sold in India, and then the pharmacy in India let it be brought into the United States and sold here, that India would have polluted it with all of the groovy, horrible things. There was actually a law that said that no pharmacy product that was sold in another country could be imported into the United States. So the reason that came about is the other countries that had more socialized medicine rapidly said, look, we're going to take our population and we're going to collectively bargain against Pfizer and AstraZeneca and all the drug companies. And if you don't give us a good enough price on this thing, we just won't buy the drug and put it in our national health services and you'll go under. So there was a price pressure on the drug industry that cut their profits because they had to sell these things at a little bit over profit to all the other countries. But by being able to manipulate our Congress through getting them to pass ridiculous laws, they could make it so that there absolutely was no way to make that happen in the United States. And they didn't have to compromise on this. So most of these pharmaceuticals are 3 to 10 times the price in the United States. And you would ask, well, why didn't we just go buy it cheaper in Canada and bring it across the border? CVS could do that. Why don't they? Well, it's because it's illegal. And so what Mr. Trump has done in that regard is basically go to the pharmaceutical companies and say, look, I can't reverse the law. That's not in my power. But what I can do is say that I'm going to make a executive order that says Medicare and Medicaid aren't going to be allowed to buy your drug unless you give us most favored nation pricing. So whatever you're selling it for in England, you got to sell it to us. And by the way, if you sell it for less money in India, you got to sell us at that price. Well, what this is going to have an effect on the rest of the world is that they're going to go to the rest of the world and say, you guys are going to get higher prices for the drugs, all right? Because the cash cow of the United States is being markedly restricted. And that's the first thing he did by saying, look, I didn't really like that we had this medicine the government gets to determine drug prices. But since I'm going to be able to negotiate for prices, here's the way I'm going to negotiate with you. You have to give it to me at the price of all the other countries. And this is going to drop drug prices for patent medicines very greatly. The other thing that Mr. Trump has done, which has been very helpful, is to our medicine security. And people should know that very little of the medicines consumed in the United States are made from things that are made in the United States. They are mostly made in China and India, mostly in China, and then sold to India, who then uses them to make medicines, which are sold to us. Were China to come out and say, we're just no longer going to sell you that, the United States would probably run out of medicine in 3 to 6 months. And because we couldn't get factories up and running fast enough to take care of that, it put us at a great security disadvantage to the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah. Well, Mr. Trump's solution to this was to go to all the companies and say, I tell you what, you're going to have 100% tariff on all of them, which means that all of a sudden it's much cheaper for you to make a factory in the United States and build it here. And by the way, he didn't just say it's got to be made here in the United States. He said the components have to be made here in the United States. So now all of a sudden these companies are saying, look, I have to have a large enough ability to make drugs to cover the United States because Mr. Trump says I'm getting 100% tariff if I don't. If I don't do that, then my tariff's, I think, going to be like 25%. And so all of a sudden these financially made drug companies, so they have to produce things. If they're going to be profitable, they have to take care of our medicine security by making them United States, which is taking fangs out of the Chinese Communist Party. Very similar to what he's done with rare earths and magnets and things of that nature. He's used economic rationale and made very intelligent things with tariff that is making our medicine security much greater and making the prices of our medicines much less expensive.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Back on this, the pricing of drugs. The common question, once this was announced about the change in drug prices that Trump announced, one of the common questions was, how did we get to this point? How did this happen where the United States was paying the price of all was paying the heavy price, and I think you touched on it in your explanation here, but can you kind of go back over that? Is that, I mean,
yeah.
that has been going on for a long time, right?
Yeah, it's actually very simple. Lobbyists threaten your legislators until they actually pass laws that the lobbyists want.
Okay. All right.
And so our legislature, as we're coming to healthcare in general, our legislature has passed a litany of really stupid laws. And I was, as the director of the Citizens Coalition for Legislature Accountability, he said, getting his plug in there. Yes. I can tell you that a legislator will only get so stupid for free. You have to threaten him with campaign cash and a primary challenge to get him to do something really dumb. And that is how this has come about. The reason we had a law that said you cannot import medicines back into the United States was based upon the idea that, oh my God, if you sold it in India, they'll adulterate all of it and bring back these unsafe medicines. And nobody cared about the fact that the seal on the body and the lot and all that could be controlled. It could be made safe. Nobody cared about that. That law is still there, all right? And yet you're going to see them move manufacturing back in the United States. But that's where it came from. It's basically lobbyists went and threatened Congress into getting something really stupid done.
Wow. Okay. That's just amazing, isn't it? How soon do you think we're going to be really feeling the price changes?
You know, if I remember the article right that I read, the end of the year is when Mr. Trump has told them that, hey, you have to start giving us most favored nation pricing. And that's a lead time for them to move the money from bank A to bank B, as they need to do to accommodate this. And so they can go back to the countries in Europe and the other parts of the world and say, look, your prices are going up. All right. We can't research and market drugs without making the money we make in the United States. So your prices are going up, or we just won't sell you drug anymore. That's going to take a while for that to work through all the other countries, but that's giving them time to do it. And I believe it starts at the first of the year, but I wouldn't want anybody to quote me on that.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, Dan, once again, very, very informative here. Just briefly now, episode 3 is supposed to be about RFK, what he's done at the CDC. Are we still on track for that, do you think?
I look forward to it, Dale. I very much look forward to it.
So right now that'll be episode number 3, right?
That'll be a very entertaining episode. I think a little eye-opening for many people when they find out exactly what's been going on at the CDC through the very earnest efforts of Secretary Kennedy.
Oh, you're not opening any eyes, Dan. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
I may drop a few jaws, though.
Once again, before we wrap it up here, Dan, tell our viewers one more time how you are connected with the RFK group.
Sure, that'll give me a chance to do my disclaimer. So I am a senior fellow of the Independent Medical Alliance, which has been asked from time to time to get together as a group and give advice to Secretary Kennedy and Health and Human Services as to how to do reform of the healthcare of the country. So everybody should know that everything I'm saying here today, I am not authorized by the Independent Medical Association, Alliance rather, or by Health and Human Services or any of its subdivisions. These opinions are mine and purely mine. But as a senior fellow of the IMA, we've been doing a lot of work with Health and Human Services, telling them what kind of things need to be changed, and not just in things at the FDA and the CDC in general, but even on medical billing and how Medicare and Medicaid works, things like that.
Okay. We got to remember, we need to say that at the very beginning every time here, I think.
Yeah, it would be best if I did that.
We'll remember that the next time. Dan, once again, thank you very much for filling us in here, and look forward to episode number 3 with you.
Thanks for having me on, Dale.
Thank you, Dan. Well, that was Dr. Dan Stock with a Convention of States here in Indiana on RFK and Make America Healthy Again, episode number 2. So hope you enjoyed that, and be looking forward to episode number 3. Everyone, have a good evening. Thank you.
Very good, very good, very good.
Very good, isn't it? And I tell you, Dan's it's always a joy talking to Dan.
Oh yeah, he's always thorough, and I always learn something, probably more than I can take in one night.
You know, I wasn't kidding. I have tasted 10W30.
I have too, on inadvertently. You know, when you change oil, sometimes sometimes you get that stuff splashed in your mouth. So
when I was certainly, well, as a kid growing up working on cars, and then I got into the classic car hobby, and yeah, there have been many times inadvertently where I tasted that, and so anyway, that's why I said that.
So you weren't one of those old, great grandfathers who tasted the oil to see if it was burnt or not.
No, I didn't do that. No. No, but I have heard that before. Yes.
Well, it's almost the same thing. You know, when I didn't have to go back that far. My father, and I believe his father, they would put a screwdriver on the top of the engine and listen to valves that way. And it's kind of like, oh, okay. Dr. Dan would appreciate that, I think.
Yeah, he would.
Listen to the heartbeat, but.
Well, Ken, we've heard a lot in the news here, certainly around the Gaza peace deal, that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee made a serious mistake, that Trump should have been selected for the Nobel Peace Prize. And, you know, and I've been hearing this said leading up to the announcement of the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize here just recently. And I just knew, that he wasn't going to get it, because some time ago, and I can't remember when we did this, but it's been at least a month or so ago. If you recall, I did a short presentation on the Nobel Peace Prize.
I remember
how that's determined. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that process begins sometime. I think the whole process takes almost a year.
Yeah. For
this whole process to work its way through and the final individual selected. So I just knew, I just felt like everything that Trump was doing was too late in the process for 2025. Now for 2026, in my opinion, it's hands down. I mean, I don't know how in the world you could.
I was going to say he's already being, I think, being thrown in his name is being thrown in the ring for 2026. And you know what, Dale? I kind of, if you kind of go back and look at how things worked out with the elections, I think we all look back and are kind of grateful that he didn't have successive terms. I think it was good for him to sit out 4 years and be able to come back when he did. And I think the same thing's going to happen with the Nobel Peace Prize. I think, if you combine 2026 with the 250th celebration of America, the guy's going to have a big year next year.
Yeah. That's a good point. Hadn't thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm saying all this is I wanted to play the piece that I did on the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yep.
The presentation that I did. It's not a real long piece, but since it's hot on everyone's mind here, I think in the news, I thought it would be helpful to play this recording again, just to once again tell people how this process starts, or how this process proceeds in selecting a Nobel Peace Prize winner. So let me bring that on here now. Well, greetings, everyone. I've been aware all my life of the Nobel Peace Prize. I think we've all heard about that, but I really didn't know a great deal about it. So I decided to look into it, and I put together a little presentation here. I hope you find it informative. I certainly did when I put it together. So I learned a lot. So let's get right into it. Well, the Nobel Peace Prize was established by the 1895 will of Alfred Nobel, the inventor of dynamite. He left his fortune to fund annual prizes, not only for peace, but also in physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, as well as peace. The Peace Prize has been awarded annually since 1901, except during major conflicts like World War II. Now, how are individuals nominated for this prize? Well, the nominations must be submitted by qualified individuals, including national politicians, university professors, international judges, and former laureates. Nominations open in September and close by January 31st of the award year. Okay. Requirements to be nominated. Candidates must be living and have made significant contributions to peace, such as conflict resolution, disarmament, or humanitarian efforts. The nomination must include then a detailed justification. Okay. What's the voting process? How does that work? Well, the Norwegian Nobel Committee, a 5-member body appointed by the Norwegian Parliament, reviews the nominations. They create a short list, then conduct investigations and vote to select the winner. A majority vote decides the winner. What's the timeline? How does this work? Well, as we mentioned, nominations close January 31st of the award year. The short list is formed by spring of that year. The winner is chosen in early October and announced shortly thereafter. The formal award ceremony takes place on December 10th in Oslo, Norway. What are the benefits to the winner? Now, I've heard different stories about what the benefits are, and I was aware that there was a monetary benefit, but I wasn't sure how much it was. Well, the Nobel Peace Prize comes with global recognition, obviously, a gold medal, a diploma, and a monetary award approximately equating $1 million. I wasn't aware of that. And of course, it often enhances the winner's influence and legacy. Obviously, that what a resume enhancement to be a Nobel Prize winner of any field. So you can imagine the influence that has on a person's career. Okay. Now, as we know, Donald Trump has been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Does he have a chance? Well, as I said, he's been nominated multiple times, as a matter of fact, particularly for his efforts in the Middle East peace agreements. Now, this nomination, current nomination, I'll just mention there's actually been a group of individuals that have submitted his name or submitted him as nomination. But the two that I want to mention are Representative Daryl Issa of California and Representative Claudia Tenney of New York. Both of those are two of our politicians here in the States that have submitted his name as a nominee. So while nomination is significant, winning requires consensus from the Nobel Committee in alignment with Nobel's peace criteria. So it remains a possibility, but obviously uncertain. And we've all, if you've been paying any attention, you've heard some reports that he's been highly favored in this, but we will see. Okay. And that, I hope that has provided you a little background on the Nobel Peace Prize and how it's done, how it's handled. So I hope you've enjoyed it. So thank you very much. And we'll see come probably about October when we will know who the winner is of the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you.
Now, Dale, I know you did a lot of research for that, obviously. I have a question. I don't know whether you'd have the answer to or whether you saw that in that, but in that monetary prize, or, you know, that amount that you weren't able to really come up with, where's the funding for that come from?
Well, I guess it comes from the estate of Alfred
Nobel.
Yeah. I assume it comes from his estate.
Must have been a big estate. They've been giving that award a long time.
Yeah, they have. Of course.
Did he have it? I bet you his kids are disappointed. Just saying.
Well, I imagine if he set this up, I imagine he set it up so that it would be funded, I assume. And of course invested and grown.
Gotcha.
So that would be my assumption on it. The point is that if you noted in there, the nominations start in September of the year. So the nominations for 2026 are already underway.
Yep.
And they will go until what was it? The end of January, I think.
Yeah.
The nominations will flow.
Yeah.
And then the committee starts
paring it down
to a short list, and then by the spring, and then they do a final vote. So, yeah, goodness, I can't imagine any way where, and if he pulls off Russia and Ukraine,
oh my word,
how in the world?
No. If that happens, then I think there's more. Then I think George Soros is probably behind the Nobel Peace Prize, in my opinion. There's no other way. There's no other way you could come up with somebody who did more for peace. It's pretty obvious.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Let's. Why don't you play? I don't see Maringo Mike's reminder on my desk here.
I wonder.
Did you not load that?
I did. I'm wondering when I had to go back in, go out and come back in, whether it got knocked out. So if you want to do a Dave's Daily Dose, I'll load this after that plays. All
right. Let's go ahead and do Dave's Daily Dose. Now this is a little bit dated. Dave did this a few weeks ago. It's on the shutdown. So I think we were only like in week 2, I believe, when he did this. David Punt, who does this, has just been appointed state director for Convention of States in Minnesota. So I don't know what the status is now of future Dave's daily doses. I don't know what the status is going to be. So I pulled this one out that he had sent me a couple weeks ago. So it's a little bit outdated, but I think you'll enjoy it anyway. So here we go.
Day 2 of the latest and greatest U.S. government shutdown has dawned, and the speechifying continues. Lizzie Warren was on CBS this morning talking to Tony DeCopel, moaning and groaning and ranting and raving that the Democrats want only to help people, to keep people healthy, make sure rural hospitals get a good Medicaid exchange rate, and make small America great again. Now, wait, I must have heard that wrong. This is Dave's Daily Dose on BrokenRoadRadio.com. I'm David Allen Punt. Breonna Lyman at the Federalist makes a compelling argument that suggests the Day 2 of the latest and greatest U.S. government shutdown has dawned, and the speechifying continues. Lizzie Warren was on CBS this morning talking to Tony DeCopel, moaning and groaning and ranting and raving that the Democrats want only to help people, to keep people healthy, make sure rural hospitals get a good Medicaid exchange rate, and make small America great again. Now, wait, I must have heard that wrong. This is Dave's Daily Dose on BrokenRoadRadio.com. I'm David Allen Punt. Breonna Lyman at the Federalist makes a compelling argument that suggests the
Looks like we're having some problems.
I think we're having some problems there, Ken.
I tell you what, let me go ahead and play the reminder, and I'll see if I can pull up another version of that. Maybe there's something with the MP.
Well, I'll tell you, we're time wise, we're probably pretty much on schedule. Let's just go ahead and hold that. Hold.
I'll play the reminder.
Yeah, play the reminder, and we'll come back.
Sounds good.
Rango Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
All right, there we go.
There you go. Well, that must have been something corrupt in that video file. We'll get that played next week or sometime.
All right, no problem, no problem. Well, let's start wrapping up then for this Monday. And coming up now next Monday on COS Today, we've got Dan Stock's episode number 3 of RFK and Make America Healthy Again. So this ought to be a really good one. I mean, they're all been good, but both 1 and 2. But I expect number 3, according to his outline that he sent me, it's got much more to it. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And time permitting, we're going to be playing Meet the Founders with Larry Hudson on Ben Franklin, and he's doing part number 4 on Ben Franklin. So once again, been very interesting and educational as far as I'm concerned. I've learned a lot about our founders here so far from Larry. So
it's always good to go back and review. Yeah, it's always good to go back and review our founders. I think Larry does a great job.
Yeah, he does a great job. And I just want to remind everybody that if you've got any comment or question about our broadcast, feel free to drop us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. So speaking of that, Ken, do we any comments from our viewers tonight that
nope.
Our questions or anything that we need to flash up?
Maybe we'll get some email on it, but right now, no, it's been pretty quiet.
Okay. I just might mention that here in Indiana, Convention of States, we've got our annual strategy meeting coming up this Saturday.
Yep.
So we'll all be headed to that and down in Anderson, Indiana. And we'll be talking about what we're going to try and accomplish in the upcoming year for 2026. So that's always a good time, always a good event to go to. So that's where we'll be this coming Saturday.
Pizza's always good, so yeah, it's worth going for a slice.
Pizza's, and I always eat too much of the sweets and stuff.
Of course, well, that's why you have to stop eating for the next 3 days, Dale.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah. That is the truth. Yes. Okay. Well, let's let Marengo Mike close us out here. And anything else, Ken, before we close out here and say good night to everyone?
Not really, Dale. It's been an interesting day, and at this point,
it's been a historic day, hasn't it?
Historic day. Yeah, I mean, we got to look back at this. We've had a number of historic type days this year, and I just we obviously are hoping for the best, and our prayers are for Donald Trump as he travels, and this whole thing really comes together. It would be well, yeah, like I said, at this point it's really hard to put into words. So
yeah. I mentioned of course next week on the 20th we'll have episode number 3 of RFK and Make America Healthy again. Now the following Monday will be our roundtable discussion.
Right.
And unless John has changed his mind, we're probably going to be talking about the Gaza peace agreement. So
yeah, I think by then too we'll probably have a few more days of what's going on and have a lot more to talk about. So
right. Mm-hmm. But what a historic day! I don't know how else you can call it anything but historic.
Yeah.
So one more war to handle. Yeah. Maybe he can get 9 wars in 9 months. 9 wars in 9 months. He's done 8 wars in 8 months. So wouldn't it be something if he could get number 9 in his 9th month?
I think if he can get the Ukraine situation straightened out, oh boy,
that would be something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ken, thanks a lot. And folks, we'll see you same time, same place next Monday night, the 20th. Good night, everyone.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.